It is always better to be late than never. Ladies and gentlemen, we apologize for the late beginning of this newscast. Good afternoon and welcome to the 12:30 on Label TV, your Pan-African channel. Straightforward, we open as during the sworn, President Kenyatta announced that his government was opening up the country to Africans by adopting a visa on arrival regime for Africa passport holders. As he mentioned, we quote, "The free movement of people on the continent has always been the cornerstone of African brotherhood and fraternity." Get the details by Naike Mbando.
During his inauguration for a second term in office, President Uhuru Kenyatta announced that Africans wishing to visit Kenya will be eligible to receive a visa on arrival. The directive, he said, was meant to enhance trade security and intercontinental travel, but also that Kenya already had one of the more straightforward online processes for short-term visas. He also added that the Kenyan President Uhuru Kenyatta on Tuesday that any African can get a visa on arrival in Kenya and will be free to settle in the country if they marry a Kenyan, removing restrictions on some nations. If you wish and find willing partner, you can marry and settle in Kenya, he said during his inauguration address, saying the move was designed to cement African ties. This commitment we make again with no requirement for reciprocity. It is also important to notice that the Central African Economic and Monetary Community reached a key milestone this year. It means that the heads of state meeting in Chad lifted visa requirements for their citizens traveling within the six-member regional bloc. But challenges remain to ensuring free movement and deepening economic integration. The announcement marked the culmination of the 23 years of negotiation. The next step is to see how this free movement will impact the African economies.
Furthermore, on Wednesday, November 29 in the evening, an emergency meeting was held at the initiative of the French presidency on the sidelines of the African Union-European Union summit in Abidjan on the fight against the traffickers of migrants sold as slaves in Libya. More information in this report. In addition to France, the EU, the Secretary General of the United Nations, Germany, Italy, Spain, Chad, Niger, Libya, represented by the President Fayez al-Sarraj, Morocco and Congo-Brazzaville were invited. During a press conference given at the residence of the French ambassador shortly after the meeting, Emmanuel Macron announced that a series of measures had been taken. Libya has reaffirmed its agreement to allow access to Libyan soil to evacuate camps where these scenes of barbarism have been identified, said the head of state of France. He added that the EU and the UN will increase their support to the International Office for Migration to help the return of all Africans who wish to return to their countries of origin. The AU has already carried out an on-site mission to identify these nationals. Cooperation on security and intelligence will be strengthened, including the establishment of a task force to dismantle trafficking networks. According to Emmanuel Macron, these human traffickers are deeply linked to the networks of armed traffickers, drug traffickers, and terrorist movements operating throughout the region. He stressed that everything will be done to dismantle these networks and their financing in close connection with the several countries of the Arabian Peninsula, but also Europe or African who are not present around the table. The Libyan political situation was also discussed during this emergency meeting. Emmanuel Macron added that he expresses the desire to finalize the agreements between the various stakeholders of the Libyan situation on the basis of the roadmap presented by the UN Special Representative Ghassan Salame last September in New York. And to conclude, he said, if we really want to fight against what is happening in Libya, it is essential to rebuild a sustainable state, a political balance within the framework of this roadmap. Also, in the same line, an effective cooperation between Africa and the EU, the only solution to horrifying migrant abuse, an issue that overshadowed the two-day Africa-EU Summit on Development and Investment, which just took place in Côte d'Ivoire. Listen to the story narrated by Thibaut Otongo Tabaga.
Former Ivorian international 30-year-old Didier Drogba is playing a great role in the African Union, European Union, in short, AU-EU 5th Summit currently underway in Abidjan. He has engaged himself in a series of activities beginning today, November 29th to tomorrow, 30th, 2017, such as shooting adverts, engaging in advocacy, and is enjoying a musical concert by one of the country's biggest group's Magic System. His main aim is to engage himself with the 36 African and European youth leaders who are expected to present a common position on youth challenges to heads of states of the summit. This year's theme is Investing in the Youth for a Sustainable Future. Notwithstanding, the youth leaders' engagement is dubbed with the Youth Plug-in Initiative. Aside youth issues, African leaders are expected to discuss on migration, especially in Libya, and on security and tourism.
Ladies and gentlemen, we apologize for the mix-up in the element. That was the wrong report. Now let's move on. New Zimbabwean President Emmerson Mnangagwa inherits the catastrophic economic record of his predecessor Robert Mugabe. Less ideological than its predecessor, it could take steps to stabilize the situation in the country without the state of the Zimbabwean economy improving in the short term. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the focus of the newscast. What perspectives for the Zimbabwean economy? Watch the commentary. In his inaugural speech on November 24th, Emmerson Mnangagwa, the new president of Zimbabwe, was very aggressive on economic issues, recalling that the reconstruction of the country will be incorporating elements of market economy and by encouraging entrepreneurship. One of his first steps in the economic field was to rename Patrick Shinamasa, a ZANU-PF history, to the post of finance minister, who had been demoted by Mugabe a month ago to the newly created portfolio of cybersecurity. Prime Minister of Zimbabwe until the 18th April 1980, Robert Mugabe took the reins of a relatively diversified economy with a growth rate of more than 10% in 1980 to 1981. Today, the Zimbabwean economy is in crisis, with per capita income rising from 1,269.5 in 1981 to 590.7 in 2008, according to the World Bank. Zimbabwe experienced its first economic difficulties in the late 1980s with balance of payment problems and a large budget deficit. Driven by the international community, the country entered a structural adjustment program in 1991, accepting a package of reforms that included liberalization of the economy, including the financial sector, as well as austerity measures. At the same time, Mugabe pursued a budget policy for the less adventurous, with in 1998 unbudgeted payments to the former veterans used as political militia and sending the army to the DRC to support Kabila, which degraded the situation of public finances. With the international financial institution having left the country in 1999, the economy gradually descended into the economic crisis with a deterioration in the monetary situation and an initial phase of hyperinflation in the early 2000s. At the same time, the Zimbabwean economy's dependence on commodities has increased. The share of mines in GDP increased from 10.2% in the 1990s to an average of 16.9% in 2009 to 2011 and 65.2% of export earnings between 2009 and 2013. Agriculture accounted for 28.3% of exports on average over the period 2009 to 2013. Nearly 93.5% of export earnings thus depended on raw materials in 2009 to 2013. In the same year, Zimbabwe abandoned its own currency, adopting the dollar as a means of payment to absorb the problems of hyperinflation. This dollarization led to a stabilization of the economic situation with an average annual growth rate of 2.9% between 2009 and 2016. According to the international development experts, one of the priorities of the new government must be to revive Zimbabwean agriculture, which could have a very strong effect on the rest of the economy, helping to reduce poverty. The agricultural sector is the basis of the direct and indirect income for 70% of the population, while 11 million hectares of state-owned arable land are now untapped. Still in economy, from Zimbabwe to Côte d'Ivoire, the Ivorian boss of INSEA, the main insurance group in French-speaking Africa, has finalized the acquisition of Diamond Bank SA, a subsidiary of the Nigerian group of the same name, active from Cotonou to Dakar. Listen to the details.
South Africa hosts the biggest solar farm on the continent with 175 MW facility in Dar, located in the country's Northern Cape region, which was officially opened in 2016. But now, Burkina Faso is holding West Africa's biggest solar farm of about 33 megawatt plant, which is located in Zatubi, outside the capital of Ouagadougou. This solar farm was built with $56.7 million and used approximately 135 acres to power up tons of households in the country. This project was funded from the European Union, in short EU, and a loan from the France Development Agency, in short AFD. The French President Emmanuel Macron even partook in the launching of the farm with President Roch-Marc Kabore. Although it took over 2 years to build and over 369 people to construct it, records indicate that only 20% of Burkina Faso's 17 million population have access to this national power system. The country is aiming to meet 30% of its power needs through solar energy by the year of 2030. Most African countries have long depended on thermal energy and are now going towards the solar energy due to the abundant sun in the region.
Ladies and gentlemen, we thank you for watching the 12:30 on Label TV, your Pan-African channel. Have a wonderful day and goodbye.